So Straub's article goes over how to peer review others' work. I think this is something that I struggle with a lot because I think that there's a fine line between, being too critical or even giving too much positive feedback. How are you ever going to learn something if you don't get any critical feedback? You don't know what you're doing wrong. But at the same time, you never want to overstep the writer and try to replace their own words. They picked their structure, form, style, and language with a certain intent and purpose. So he kind of suggests explaining how you feel as a writer or how certain things make you feel as a reader. And I think that's a really interesting approach because then that leaves it in the writer's hands. They can look at their work and say, well, this isn't really what I intended to do, or this is what exactly the response that I wanted. Another approach that he suggested was kind of taking a step back and looking at the different stages of drafting, what the assignment is, what the writer's interests and aims are, and what work needs to be done. And, that's critical feedback too. Is the writer accomplishing the goals and guidelines set out by the assignment? And so that's another form, I think, of critical feedback that I should try working on. I also thought it was really interesting that he mentioned whether knowing the writer's background would affect the way that you criticized or, I guess, commented on their work. And I thought that honestly would be beneficial because then you would know the history of maybe, or I guess you would know where the writer's coming from, and you have more of a personal connection and can understand if maybe they executed their writing the way that they wanted to. I think peer review is really important because then how are you ever supposed to improve? It's sometimes hard to get out of your tunnel vision. And I took slam poetry last year, and after every performance we would give feedback, and a lot of the time it was really hard to give critical feedback because the writer is expressing themselves emotionally and even performing it emotionally, and how are you to tell someone how to write something or express themselves the way that they want to? So it's definitely a thin line, and it's hard and something that we should work on regularly.